Have you ever scrolled through comments online and seen people use the terms Philistine and Palestinian interchangeably? Or maybe you've heard a historical claim linking the two and wondered, is that actually true? It's a question that pops up a lot, and frankly, the answer is a lot more fascinating than a simple yes or no. Today, we're diving deep into history, archaeology, and language to uncover the real story. What is the difference between the ancient Philistines and modern Palestinians? Let's untangle this together. First, let's travel back in time. Way back. We're talking about the late Bronze Age, around the 12th century BCE. This is when the Philistines first appear in the historical record. Who were they? Well, they weren't originally from the land we now call Israel and Palestine. The most widely accepted theory, supported by archaeological evidence and ancient texts, is that the Philistines were one of the Sea Peoples. This was a confederation of seafaring groups who migrated from the Aegean region. Think modern-day Greece and the surrounding islands. They tried to invade Egypt, were repelled by Pharaoh Ramesses III, and eventually settled along the southern coastal plain of Canaan. They established a famous group of 5 cities known as the Philistine Pentapolis: Ashkelon, Ashdod, Ekron, Gath, and Gaza. Does that last one sound familiar? It should. But hold that thought. Archaeologically, their arrival marks a dramatic shift. We see new styles of pottery, very similar to Mycenaean Greek pottery, suddenly appearing. Their architecture was different, their burial customs were different, and even their diet changed, with a notable increase in the consumption of pork, which was less common among their Canaanite neighbors. They were, in essence, a distinct cultural and ethnic group that arrived and carved out a territory for themselves. Now, what about their language? We don't have a Rosetta Stone for the Philistine language, but the few inscriptions we've found contain non-Semitic words that appear to have Indo-European roots, again pointing towards an Aegean origin. Over time, however, they began to assimilate. They adopted the local Canaanite language, which was a Semitic language, and their distinct material culture gradually blended with the surrounding regions. By the time the Babylonian king Nebuchadnezzar II swept through the area in the late 7th century BCE, the Philistines as a distinct political and cultural entity were effectively wiped off the historical map. They disappeared from history, assimilated into the broader population of the ancient Near East. So, to be clear, the Philistines were a specific people with Aegean origins who lived in a specific part of the Levant for about 600 years and then vanished as a distinct group. Okay, let's fast forward through a few empires: the Babylonians, the Persians, the Greeks under Alexander the Great, and then the Romans. This is where the name Palestine enters the picture, and this is a crucial part of the story. After the Romans crushed the Bar Kokhba revolt in 135 CE, a major Jewish uprising, the Roman Emperor Hadrian wanted to erase the connection of the Jewish people to the land. As a punitive measure, he merged the province of Roman Judea with Galilee and renamed the entire region Syria Palestina. Why Palestina? It was a Latinization of the Greek name for the region, which had been used by writers like Herodotus centuries earlier. Herodotus referred to the coastal area as the land of the Philistines, or Palestine. So, the Romans essentially reached back into history, grabbed the name of the long-gone enemies of the Israelites, the Philistines, and applied it to the whole province to spite the Jewish population. At this point, Palestina was a geographical name given by an imperial power, not the name of a specific ethnicity or nation. The people living there were Jews, Samaritans, and various other mixed Semitic groups who had been there for generations. Over the next several centuries, the region saw massive changes. The rise of Christianity, the Byzantine Empire, and then, in the 7th century CE, the Arab conquests. This was the single most transformative event for the identity of the region's population. The arrival of Arab tribes from the Arabian Peninsula brought a new language, Arabic, and a new religion, Islam. Over a long period, the majority of the local population, descendants of the ancient Israelites, Canaanites, and all the other groups who had lived there, gradually adopted Arabic as their primary language and Islam as their religion. This process is known as Arabization and Islamization. This is the origin of the modern Palestinian people. They are the descendants of all the peoples who lived in that land for millennia, including ancient Israelites, Canaanites, Arameans, and yes, the Arab conquerors who arrived in the 7th century. Genetically, studies have shown that modern Palestinians, especially Christians and Muslims, share significant ancestry with other Levantine populations, including Jewish people, tracing back to the ancient peoples of the Bronze Age Levant. Their culture, language, and national identity, however, are distinctly Arab. They speak an Arabic dialect and see themselves as part of the wider Arab world, but with a unique national identity tied to the land of Palestine. So let's put it all together. The Philistines were an ancient, non-Semitic people from the Aegean who settled in the coastal Levant around 1200 BCE and disappeared from history by 600 BCE. The name Palestine was a geographical term revived by the Romans in 135 CE, derived from the Greek name for the Philistines' old territory. The Palestinian people are a modern Arab nation. Their identity was forged over centuries, primarily shaped by the Arabization of the Levant starting in the 7th century CE. They are the indigenous descendants of the land's ancient inhabitants, but they are not the descendants of the Philistines. There is no direct, linear ethnic or cultural line connecting the ancient Philistines to modern Palestinians. The connection is purely etymological. It's in the name. A Roman emperor used an old name for a region, and that name stuck, eventually becoming the name of the modern nation that emerged from that very land. Confusing the two is like saying modern Romanians are the same as ancient Romans. The names sound similar, and there's a historical link, but they are completely different peoples separated by vast stretches of time and profound cultural and linguistic shifts. Understanding this distinction is not just a quirky historical fact. It is crucial for cutting through misinformation and having a more informed conversation about the region's history and its peoples. History is complex, layered, and rarely simple. The story of the Philistines and Palestinians is a perfect example of that. Thank you so much for joining me on this deep dive into history. I hope this cleared things up for you. If you found this video interesting and learned something new, please give it a thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you don't miss our next exploration into the fascinating stories that shape our world. See you next time.